Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has delivered a stark warning that could change everything we thought we knew about Russia's intentions in Ukraine. While the world prepares for a historic summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska, Zelenskyy is sounding the alarm.
And if it's a fair deal, I'll reveal it to the European Union leaders and to the NATO leaders and also to President Zelenskyy. I think out of respect, I'll call him first. And then I'll call them after. And I may say, lots of luck, keep fighting. Or I may say, we can make a deal.
Putin isn't preparing for peace. He's gearing up for a massive new offensive. This isn't speculation. This is intelligence from Ukraine's military commanders, and what they've discovered should terrify everyone watching this conflict. Zelenskyy's warning comes at a critical moment. Just as Trump announced his meeting with Putin for Friday in Alaska, the first face-to-face talks between the leaders since 2019, Ukraine's president dropped a bombshell. In a video message posted Monday night, Zelenskyy declared that Putin is definitely not preparing for a ceasefire or an end to the war. Instead, Ukrainian intelligence reports indicate that Russia is redeploying troops and forces in ways that suggest preparations for new offensive operations. This revelation cuts to the heart of what many experts have been warning about for months. Putin appears to be playing a different game entirely.
It's the worst thing that's happened, by far the worst that's happened since World War II. So I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin. And I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war. You got to end it. We're going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin. And at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made.
How will you know that?
Because that's what I do. I make deals.
That was President Trump yesterday previewing his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin later this week.
While the two world leaders are still working to finalize the details of the summit, Trump admitted it would take further meetings to reach a peace deal and said his ultimate goal is to put Putin and Zelenskyy in a room to put an end to the war, even if it means Ukraine giving up territory.
Now, ceding land is a line that President Zelenskyy has consistently said he would not cross, saying in a video last week that Russia must not be rewarded for their aggression, and warned yesterday that Putin's goal with the summit is to deceive Trump.
He's agreed to meet with Trump, yes, but intelligence suggests he's using this diplomatic window to position his forces for renewed aggression. Zelenskyy's intelligence briefing painted a chilling picture of Putin's true intentions. There is no indication whatsoever that the Russians have received signals to prepare for a post-war situation, the Ukrainian president explained. On the contrary, they are redeploying their troops and forces in ways that suggest preparations for new offensive operations. If someone is preparing for peace, this is not what he does. This assessment aligns with a pattern we've seen throughout this conflict. The Alaska summit, scheduled for Friday, represents a high-stakes gamble for all parties involved. Trump, who campaigned on ending the war in Ukraine within 24 hours of taking office, sees this as his opportunity to deliver on that promise. Putin, facing increasing economic pressure and military setbacks, may view the meeting as a chance to secure territorial gains through diplomacy that he couldn't achieve on the battlefield. But Zelenskyy's warning suggests Putin's real goal may be to buy time and international legitimacy while preparing for a renewed military campaign. What makes this situation even more dangerous is what's happening behind the scenes. Trump has suggested that any peace deal would involve some swapping of territories, a proposition that Ukraine has categorically rejected. Zelenskyy has been crystal clear in his response. Ukrainians will not gift their land to the occupier.
President Trump announces that he is preparing to meet with Putin in Alaska, very far away from this war that is going on in our land, against our people, which still cannot be ended without us, without Ukraine. The relevant Ukrainian territorial issue is already in the constitution of Ukraine. No one will and cannot retreat from this. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. Ukraine is ready for real solutions that can bring peace. Any decisions that are against us, any decisions that are without Ukraine, they're also decisions against peace. They will not work. These are dead solutions. They will never work.
This fundamental disagreement between the American and Ukrainian positions creates a significant obstacle to any meaningful peace process. It also plays directly into Putin's hands, as the Russian leader has consistently demanded territorial concessions as a prerequisite for ending hostilities. European leaders are clearly concerned about the direction of these negotiations. In their joint statement, leaders from France, Italy, Germany, Poland, the United Kingdom, the European Union, and Finland emphasized several key principles. Ukraine must be involved in any talks about its future. Meaningful negotiations can only occur in the context of a ceasefire, and international borders must not be changed by force. The path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without Ukraine.
Is now a rush underway both to get the logistics nailed down for this meeting on Friday in Alaska, but also to get some of the policy parameters, the contours of what these two men will discuss sort of nailed down. And it does appear as if the White House is open to hearing out some of these concerns that you're hearing from European leaders about how exactly this meeting will go down. We saw that play out yesterday, the Vice President J.D. Vance meeting with European and Ukrainian officials in the English countryside to talk about how they view this meeting. They think that there should be a ceasefire in place before anything else is discussed. They want, when it comes to these territorial concessions, there to be a degree of reciprocity. And perhaps most urgently, they want Ukraine represented. They want Vladimir Zelenskyy to be able to help dictate the fate of his own country. And it does appear as if
these principles directly contradict what intelligence suggests Putin is actually planning. The military situation on the ground supports Zelenskyy's assessment. Russian forces have been repositioning in key areas, particularly in the Zaporizhia region, where they appear to be preparing for renewed offensive operations. Ukraine's military spokesperson for the southern frontline sector, Vladislav Voloshin, confirmed to Reuters that Russia is moving military units in the Zaporizhia region for what appears to be further assaults. This military activity contradicts the narrative of a Russia preparing for peace. Instead, it suggests a Russia preparing for war, potentially a more intensive phase of the conflict than what we've seen so far. Putin's apparent willingness to engage in peace talks may be nothing more than an elaborate deception.
Yeah, I mean, it depends really what Ukraine can expect to get back from this, and it's always been a red line for President Zelenskyy to not cede territory to Russia without Russia forcibly occupying it. Obviously, Ukraine was invaded, and so for the thousands of Ukrainians who have died, their families, the public sentiment here, simply giving Russia land in exchange for a ceasefire, no matter how long that may last, is politically toxic as an idea, and also unwise, frankly, given that Russia has a history of violating ceasefires it's agreed to. How a land swap would even work, I struggle to think what it is that Russia currently occupies that it would be willing to give back to Ukraine. There are slivers of land north of Sumy, to the east of Kharkiv, northeast of Kharkiv, which are occupied by Russia in the border areas. Putin calling them a buffer zone. Maybe they could pull out of those areas, but they're comparatively tiny to the huge swathes of land that appear to be in Russia's sights that it wants Kiev to just give to them without a fight. That would include two towns in the Donetsk region, Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka, that are close to being encircled by Russia's summer offensive. Still some way off, but they're closing the net there certainly. And then other towns north of that, Kramatorsk, Slovyansk, Dobropilya, under pressure.
Zelenskyy's warning also highlighted Putin's likely approach to the Alaska summit. According to Ukrainian intelligence, Putin intends to present his meeting with Trump as a personal victory and then continue acting exactly as before in the war on Ukraine. This assessment suggests that Putin views the summit not as an opportunity for genuine peace negotiations, but as a propaganda victory that he can use to justify continued aggression. The Russian leader's goal appears to be securing international legitimacy through engagement with the United States, while maintaining his military objectives in Ukraine. Throughout this conflict, Putin has proven adept at presenting himself as reasonable in diplomatic settings while pursuing aggressive policies on the ground.
Being national interests, whether it's the United States, Ukraine, Russia, or any of our allies, you just can't take people at their face value. You're going to look at actions. And I think that's one of the things that is President Trump has mentioned, is that he would have a good conversation with Vladimir Putin, and then that night, rockets and drones would attack the major cities in Ukraine, and so it's going to be about actions. Words are cheap, but in this case, whether it's the Russians or the Ukrainians, both sides are going to have to take the actions to have peace and to continue to honor that peace. And I pay very close attention to a lot of the conflicts around the world. And in each case where President Trump has come in and helped negotiate a resolution of it, it has been a verification that the hostilities have concluded.
The broader implications of this intelligence assessment extend far beyond the immediate conflict in Ukraine. If Zelensky's warning proves accurate, it means that Putin is using the prospect of peace talks as cover for military escalation. This would represent a significant escalation in the conflict and could have serious implications for European security more broadly. It also raises questions about the effectiveness of diplomatic engagement with Russia under current circumstances. Trump's response to this intelligence will be crucial. The president has expressed confidence that he can determine, probably in the first 2 minutes of meeting Putin, whether progress is possible. But Zelensky's warning suggests that Putin's true intentions may not be immediately apparent in a face-to-face meeting. The Russian leader has demonstrated a willingness to use diplomatic engagement as a tool of military strategy rather than as a genuine path to peace.
Solve this crisis in 48 hours, 24 hours. The reason he hasn't is because Putin has been playing him, has been giving him, as he says, lip service, saying he'll do one thing and then the next day he bombs another city in Ukraine. So if there's some skepticism there, that might change the dynamic. However, whether or not that comes forward when the two are actually face to face, that remains to be seen. We know Putin knows how to talk to them.
The stakes of the Alaska summit extend beyond the immediate question of ending the war in Ukraine. If Putin is indeed using these talks as cover for military preparation, as Zelensky suggests, then the summit could inadvertently provide Russia with the diplomatic cover it needs to launch a major new offensive. This would represent a significant strategic victory for Putin and a corresponding setback for Ukraine and its Western allies. Zelensky's warning also underscores the importance of maintaining military support for Ukraine regardless of the outcome of diplomatic talks. The Ukrainian president's message is clear. Even as diplomatic efforts continue, Ukraine must be prepared for the possibility that Russia is using these talks as a smokescreen for renewed aggression. This reality means that Western military aid and support for Ukraine remain as critical as ever, even as diplomatic efforts intensify. The intelligence assessment that Zelensky presented represents a sobering reminder of the challenges involved in negotiating with Putin. Throughout this conflict, the Russian leader has consistently demonstrated a pattern of deception and manipulation. Zelensky's warning suggests that this pattern is continuing even as the highest-level diplomatic engagement in years is about to take place. As the world watches the Alaska summit unfold, Zelensky's warning serves as a crucial reminder that Putin's actions on the ground matter more than his words at the negotiating table. The Ukrainian president's intelligence briefing suggests that while Putin may be talking about peace in Alaska, he's preparing for war in Ukraine. This disconnect between diplomatic engagement and military reality represents one of the most significant challenges facing efforts to end this conflict. The coming days will reveal whether Zelensky's warning proves accurate. If Putin is indeed using the Alaska summit as cover for military preparation, it will represent a significant test of the international community's ability to respond to Russian aggression. It will also demonstrate the continued importance of supporting Ukraine not just diplomatically, but militarily, as it faces the prospect of renewed Russian offensive operations. The stakes couldn't be higher, and Zelensky's warning ensures that the world will be watching not just what Putin says in Alaska, but what Russia does on the battlefield in the days and weeks that follow.